Hi, we're going to be starting our new science topic today, and we're going to be doing all about plants. So we're going to start by just observing plants and notice what we see around us and see if we can then use that to label the main part of plants and trees. So here are lots of examples of different plants. Now, we picked a poor time of year in some respects to be looking at plants because lots of these lovely things we won't be seeing. Have a think why that might be. That's right, because it's winter. We do get some flowering plants in the winter, and it's worth, whenever you go outside for a walk, looking really closely for signs of some spring plants, daffodils, snowdrops, and things like tulips and things popping through. So here are some plants that commonly grow in the wild. I wonder if any of you know any of the names. Take a moment to look really closely because some of these will be familiar to you because they pop up everywhere. Okay, so here we have daisies, buttercups, dandelions, clover, nettles. You've got to be careful with those ones because they sting. I'm not sure about that one. I think one of those is a dog rose. They both look like types of rose to me. And some ivy. Let's have a look, see how many I was able to identify. Bramble, of course. Now a bramble, that was a bit tricky to spot because we more famously recognise that when it has its fruit in late summer and we go brambling. Here are some plants that you won't find necessarily growing in the wild, but you may well choose to plant in your garden. So come summer, you might see lots of these lovely plants. This one, hidden behind this label here, we are actually going to be growing. I'm sending home for you a sunflower seed, some soil in which to grow them, and a plant pot to put them in, and some instructions. And it will take a few weeks, but the aim is to plant them, take very good care of them, and see who can grow a sunflower plant. So that's something to look forward to over the coming few days. So here we have some grass. Okay, we often put those down on our lawns in our back garden or on grass verges. The school field is covered in grass. Here is an iris, one of my favourites. Lilies, I do like lilies, but they make me sneeze. Poppies, we often get poppies growing wild too. Rose, I've already mentioned the sunflowers that you will be growing at home. Sweet peas, one of my favourites, they smell beautifully. And fuchsias, we actually have some of those scattered around the school. So, your first activity is actually going to be to label the plant parts. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to pause this and take a good think, see what you already know before you label those parts, and we'll go through those answers shortly. Okay, how did you do? So I'll start down here. Now this is a part of the plant we often don't see, okay, unless we need to repot them, but actually it's an incredibly important part of the plant, which we'll find out why in the next few lessons. This is what we call the roots. So roots. Here we're pointing to these. Well, these are very obvious, I think. Those are all leaves. So if you're just pointing to one of them, we call it a leaf. Leaf. Now this part actually holds the plant up, this long thin part, and this arrow is pointing to that. That is what we call the stem. This one I think is possibly the easiest one on there. Yep, that's a flower. Important to note that not all plants have flowers. And here we have a bud, which is a little flower about to open up. So let's move on to think about trees. Okay, we're very lucky in the school grounds to have lots and lots of lovely trees and some different varieties of trees. There are lots in the park as well. I wonder, is a tree a plant? Well, yes, they are. And this is why. They grow, they have roots, they have leaves. Some have flowers and fruits, not all. They have a big, thick stem called a trunk. So instead of referring to this part as a stem, it's known as the trunk in a tree. And they have smaller branches and twigs that grow from the trunk. I don't expect you to know the names of them, but I just want to make you aware of all the different types of trees. And perhaps next time you're in the park, you could take a look out for some of these. So we have oak trees. There are lots of those in East Park. Holly. Now holly this time of year still looks fantastic because it's what we call an evergreen tree. We'll talk more about that shortly. Hawthorn, birch, rowan, beech, sycamore and lime tree. So that's just a few of the different varieties of trees you can find. Okay, so trees are plants. Are all trees the same? Do they have different names? Well, we know now that there are lots of different types of trees and that actually they have different names. They also have some special scientific names that split the different types of tree. So here is a picture. This isn't a dead tree, it's what we call a deciduous tree. Okay, and if you take a look outside wherever you see trees, most of the trees you see at the minute will be looking like this, okay, without any leaves on at all. Why is that? That's because it's winter and they lose their leaves in the autumn and shut down really over winter, ready for spring when their leaves will regrow. I mentioned holly on the previous slide. Holly is a type of evergreen tree. Okay, these trees don't lose their leaves at all. They keep them all year round, even in winter, which is lovely because it brings a little bit of greenery. So there is a cycle to a deciduous tree. So remember, these are the ones that lose their leaves. So in spring, the trees start to grow new leaves. In summer, the trees have grown lots of leaves, and some trees grow fruit. By autumn, one of my favourite seasons, the leaves on the trees usually change colour and start to fall off. We are currently in winter, where deciduous trees have no leaves at all and their branches are bare. Deciduous trees' leaves are usually flat, wide, and have veins running through them. Okay, and you can identify the different types of tree from its leaves. When you are all back in school in the spring and summer, we will do a little look outside and we'll see what types of trees we can examine looking at their leaves. Okay, here are a few pictures of some very famous trees. Oak trees, birch trees. If you look, this is what it meant by the veins. You see those little lines running through. Sycamore trees and rowan trees. Can you see the differences in the leaves? Evergreen trees, they keep their leaves all year round. Evergreen trees often grow into a pointy shape. You'll recognise this quite typically as a Christmas tree. There are lots of other types of evergreen trees too. That's one very famous example. Their leaves are usually called needles, and it's not like the trees that we looked at on the deciduous where they're wide and flat. These ones are narrow and pointy. Evergreen tree leaves are usually thick and small. They are often needle-shaped and they feel waxy if you were to touch them. We can identify the type of tree from its leaves. So here are some evergreen trees, and you can see what we mean about those needle-like leaves. Okay. All except for a holly tree. You'll know this one because it's usually quite prickly and can sometimes have beautiful red or orange berries. I'll give you a moment to look at those differences in the leaves. So let's have a little recap about what we've done so far. You have 1 minute to think about the different part of plants. I'll allow you to pause for 1 minute there. Right, now we've done that, we'll look at labelling a tree. Okay, what do you notice about the tree at the moment? Well, we've just covered this. They don't have any leaves at the moment because it's winter. Okay, let's see though if you can name the parts of a tree. Clearly one that's growing in the summer. How do I know this? Well, what's this hanging from the tree? And what are these? I'll let you think. Okay, I'd like you to complete the worksheet that has been sent home for you. Pause the video whilst you do so, and then we'll go through those answers. Okay, so here we have the fruit, nice and obvious. Here we have a leaf, plural of leaf when you have more than one is leaves. Here we have the trunk. Remember, it does a similar job to the stem in plant, but it's much thicker. Here we have roots, so these will be underground. Here are the branches. And this tree currently doesn't have any flowers, okay, but you would find them off the branches if it did. So, I know it's difficult during lockdown, but if you can, at some point go for a walk outside to see what plants and what trees you can find. Okay, and then just have a think about all the interesting plants and trees that you did see. Could you name the parts? Could you tell whether they were deciduous or whether they were an evergreen? Did you notice any plants growing anywhere? And that's your science for today. Goodbye.